So we go to this village, and I'll never forget the experience, because when we got there, the kids were running out from everywhere. I mean, they were coming from, from all different nooks and crannies, and they were coming out, and they were so excited to get the shoes. I mean, it was almost like it was Christmas Day, and I couldn't believe how excited they were, and how excited their parents were. And as I watched the volunteers get on their hands and knees and see the exchanges between these kids, it was such a beautiful thing that I just got on my hands and knees and started doing it too. And I must say, we did it all afternoon, and I was exhausted by the end of the day. But when we left, we got back in the vans, I was just so joyful. I had never done anything like this, and it was so foreign to me, but I felt so good. I was just filled, mentally, physically, spiritually. I was just filled up by the exchanges I had with these kids. And I remember going back to where they dropped me off. I was staying on this farm, and I was having dinner that night with my friend Alejo, who was actually my polo teacher at the time. And I was talking to Alejo, and I said, you're never going to believe what I did today. And I told him the whole story and how exciting it was and how great it was. And he was so excited for me. He could see the passion and the joy in my face. But at the end of dinner, we're having dessert, and I remember talking. He said, Blake, I have something I want to ask you. And this is not to, by any means, take away from the experience you had. But, I mean, those kids you give shoes to, their feet are going to grow pretty fast. And if that's their only pair of shoes, they're going to grow out of them at least in 4 or 5 months. And if they don't grow out of them, if it's their only pair of shoes, they're going to wear out of the shoes. The shoes don't last that long. And so he said, so what are you going to do to give them another pair? Because it's not going to help them to have shoes once. And I remember thinking, wow, I was so caught up in the joy of giving in that experience that I didn't even ask the volunteers what the plan was to sustain it. And so I went to bed that night, and I remember kind of having two kind of feelings. And on one side, I felt really great about what we did. And on the other side, I had this kind of deep concern that maybe what we did really wasn't going to be that good after all, because unless there was a way to continue the giving, it wasn't going to be that helpful to these kids. And it concerned me. And I remember waking up the next day and actually waking up quite early, and I was having some coffee, and I was sitting there, and I don't know about you guys, but if I ever have a good idea, it's the first thing in the morning. That's my time to really think. And I was sitting there, and I was thinking about what Alejo had said, and I started thinking more about this issue of continuing to give kids shoes, and what it would take. What if I started a charity and get donations? And the more I thought about that, then I thought, well, then you're dependent on someone, and what happens if the donations don't come? And over this kind of morning of writing my journal and thinking, I came to this idea of, it doesn't have to be a charity problem. Business could actually, entrepreneurship could actually do something positive here. And I thought, instead of starting a shoe charity that's dependent on donations, what if I started a shoe business, a for-profit company, where every time I sold a pair of shoes, I could give a pair away? And so, if I could continue selling them, I could continue giving them, and then therefore these kids would continue to get shoes every 5 or 6 months as they grew out of them and they needed them. And I could feel really good about the work that we were doing. And as I was having all these conversations kind of in my mind and on my journal and getting excited about it, Alejo came up and told me it was time for breakfast, and I stopped him and I said, look, I have a solution to the question you asked. What do you think about this? What if we took your classic Argentine alpargata shoe and built a business around it? Made it nicer, put some arch support, put a rubber sole, but every time we sell one, we give it away, 1 for 1. And he loved it. I mean, Alejo's this great guy. I'm actually going to be with him tomorrow because we're going back to Argentina. We're going to be giving away our 1 millionth pair of shoes. But Alejo was, just this young guy who just, when I told him this idea, he was like, yes, let's do it. And he started rattling off all these ideas and things. And, oh, we got to meet with my brother's cousin who knows someone who was pretty funny. And before I knew it, by lunchtime, we had kind of made a commitment to each other that we were going to do this. There were about 250 kids in the village. We figured if we could make 250 shoes like we were envisioning, then every 6 months we could sell them and come back. And just this one village we would focus on. And so the only problem was this was at the end of my 1-month holiday, and my partners at my online driver's ed company were expecting me back in Los Angeles in like 3 or 4 days. So I knew I had to call them. I knew I couldn't let this opportunity pass me by. It seemed too right. The idea just made too much sense. And so I called the guys and I explained to them that even though I'd been there for a month, I'd come up with this idea and I needed at least 2 or 3 more weeks to see if we could make these shoes. And would they let me stay? And I think they heard the passion in my voice. And they said, okay, fine, but right when you get back, you have a lot of work to do. I said, okay, fine. So later when I traveled around and went to these, literally factories that were the size of like a single car garage, and after about 3 weeks, we finally made about 250 pairs of the original TOMS shoes. And I got 3 duffel bags. I remember it like it was yesterday. Stuffed all the shoes in there, said goodbye to Vallejo, and got on the plane to Los Angeles.